Welcome back to the Lessons for Tomorrow podcast. This is Tim Elanius, your host, who has not been a host for a while. I have enjoyed having some guest hosts on the show, and I'm excited to kick off the 2024 season with regards to a follow-up from the last episode that Joe, the Duke Campagna, actually ran for us alongside of a representative from PayPal. So, Joe, excited to have you here. We are going to kind of dive into a couple different areas of digital payments today and just kind of expand upon that conversation that you previously held. But do you want to maybe just give you a quick introduction for maybe brand new listeners who have not heard your voice?
My name is Joe Campagna. I am a subject matter expert here at American Eagle about credit card payments. I've been in the industry for close to 17 years. And when we need to go down the rabbit hole of credit cards, it's usually when I get brought into the conversation.
There's so many ways that could take that phrase of going down the rabbit hole of credit cards. We are not a financial podcast episode, so no. I won't. So overall, I definitely want to kind of just get a recap of the previous episode. And we really were highlighting PayPal Complete Payments, or PayPal PCP offering, and just maybe give our listeners a quick overview, the features of it, and why it's really standing out in the digital payment space right now.
So PayPal developed this product and really started to roll it out mainly to kind of help merchants. And it's this challenge that they typically bring us. We get to the checkout. How do I get them to convert and not leave or not have an issue with payment in the sense of choice? So, nobody wants to get to the final part and then not get it over the finish line. And what PayPal has done is they've kind of built this technological tool that allows you to take not only credit and debit cards, but Apple Pay, Google, Venmo. There's a buy now, pay later element. So it's almost a all-in-one type of offering that really you're doing with one kind of code stack. Now, again, I'm not a code guy, but one code stack of product. And you're really giving everybody this choice of how do you want to pay? Like, what is your, and everybody pays a little bit differently. Some people love Apple Pay and some people don't trust it because they think that Apple has their credit card when that's really not the case.
Yeah, I'm an Apple Pay fanboy. So we all know this, I'm an Apple fanboy. Apple Pay is fantastic for me. I can complete a transaction fast. I feel it's super secure compared to a lot of other opportunities.
You double click,
payment.
Stare at your phone, and
exactly
whatever you're buying is now in the queue to be sent to you.
Yeah.
So PayPal really took advantage of that. And I think they also bundled in some of their other products to kind of make it easy for merchants to do that. And the big ones being Venmo and buy now, pay later, which, they can turn on and off. Everybody always seems to start the conversation with how do we get Apple Pay or a wallet of some sort on? And we can kind of say, well, we can do that and more. And that's really where PayPal's coming from. It's very new. They're starting to really roll it out globally. It's definitely hit the US and Canada. So I think in the next 6 months to a year, depending on, adoption rates, I think you'll see, this a lot more. But I think you're going to see that proliferation of payment opportunities become more robust on websites. I think when, we're all starting to get used to when we go to pay, put in your cell phone, and then before you can even get to the next cell, it's like, here's your code.
Yeah.
And then you have to ask, okay, well, do I want to do the code or don't I? Do they have too much information? But it's going to have that where it's giving you the opportunity to pay however you want and to get it done incredibly fast.
Yep. From the merchant perspective, right? So that's the consumer perspective. It's great. It's a very fast transaction, which benefits the merchants as well. But there's other benefits to what PCP is bringing to market and all their solutions as well that are coming out with just regards to things such as fraud protection or chargeback protection, which is very critical in today's day and age, because for the amount of packages that are delivered regularly, even to my own home too often, and that's been in past episodes, but we're not going to go there. But the online transaction of multiple quantity of the same product because of sizing and other reasons, right? That they just ordered a whole bunch of things and then decided to return a whole bunch of things. So this is providing more benefits for the merchant from those areas, correct?
Yeah. I mean, PayPal has been around a very long time. And because of that, they've been able to gather data and understand where there might be potential for fraud or this card is having fraud. And they're able to leverage that to help merchants. And that's one thing that I probably run into more than pricing is it's always getting brought into the fraud question. And it's hard because a small or even a medium-sized business And if there's solutions out there, please email us. I would love to see
Mhm.
these, because it seems like when we get the solution, it's for a massive company, or the cost is massive, to the point where these small to medium sized businesses are like, it's cheaper to just deal with the fraud.
Mhm.
And the tools are there, but the costs seem to be just not in line. We're trying to solve a small 5-pound problem with 1,000-pound weight in terms of cost. And most of the merchants, they're game for this, but when they see what the opportunities are, they bring up some of the companies and we show them, and they're like, yeah, I'm not doing that. Like, it just doesn't make sense.
Mhm.
And you can't fault them for it. So then we try to put in some other, safety measures to prevent that. But it does come back to a bit of a human element. It's also you build a better mousetrap, somebody's going to break it. So there's always going to be some element of fraud. I would love to say there would never be. I think there always will be something going on, or some aspect that we need to be aware of. It's just, how do we tackle that in a cost effective way for some of these small to medium sized businesses that don't have millions of dollars to spend on fraud prevention?
Yeah, no, definitely. Just thinking about one thing you mentioned earlier too, in fraud, what I like about things such as Apple Pay, or even the texting of a code with some of the different solutions out there for the multi-factor
Hmm.
authentication, is not only is it speed up my checkout process, but I feel more secure about it as a consumer, that this website is validating that it's me. It's not just, oh yeah, I fill out a form, the payment method goes through and it's done. But for me, it's twofold. It's the security perspective
Yeah.
as a consumer, but it's also, and you mentioned it earlier, the speed to checkout is increased dramatically. I hate having to fill out the billing and check that it's the same as the shipping. So when I see the option for Apple Pay or whatever method that you prefer, it speeds that up so much for the end consumer.
Hmm.
And at the end of the day, most of the other defaults like shipping speed, yes, there's still options out there with some e-commerce sites, but a lot of them default to the one that most people prefer.
Right.
And you don't have to even worry about that as another kind of friction point in the checkout process that kind of makes someone pause and think. The best one I would love to see, and I doubt this will ever happen, but I would love to see any available promotion code automatically applied for me as well. But well, I'll save that for a future episode because there's all sorts of issues going down that road.
But I think I don't disagree. I would love for that as a consumer, but as the business, it's like, listen, I want you to
Mhm.
take advantage,
Yeah.
but you need a little bit of effort. Like, if
Yeah.
I'm giving you 20% off, I need you to, a little bit of skin in this game.
Yeah.
It shouldn't just be populating and that sort of thing. Like, for one brand recently, they did a survey, and they, it took them about a week, and now I have a code for 20% off of a certain amount purchased. To have that out there floating, and they don't get their data is
Mhm.
interesting. But I would be game to see that if there's 5 or 10%, and they are going to figure out if you're the brand new consumer for 10%. I would love it where I can get that and I don't have to sign up for email and texting,
Mhm.
so that I can get the code and then get out of email and texting, because then I seem to get that daily of, do you need another pair of pants? It's like, no, not yet. Give me like 6 weeks.
Yeah. So a little bit discussion about the future here. Where do you see any new and emerging digital payment platforms coming out, such as blockchain-based payments, so like Coinbase for cryptocurrencies, or platforms that are looking more on the cross-border transactions to lower fees where possible? What are your thoughts there, and what do you know?
So, in terms of the crypto, I think it's interesting. 2 years ago, I went to a industry conference and there was a ton on crypto. And in 2 years, there isn't a lot left on crypto.
Hmm.
I think that is going to be there, and it's going to be an aspect of the industry, but it's not as much of a prevalence now as it was 2 years ago, partly because of everything that's happened. And there's so much uncertainty. Most people
Hmm.
didn't understand crypto when it was hot. And now
Hmm.
you're like, hey, do you want to pay with crypto? And it's like, I don't really understand what it is anyway. And, and then the crypto that you may have is tied to a dollar. And I'm like, well, why don't I just pay with a dollar?
Hmm.
So I think that there's a space for that, but where that's going to be in the next couple of years, I think is a big unknown. Partly because it is so unregulated and there's a lot of questions by the normal
Hmm.
person. I kind of always think of, how would my parents deal with this? And my mom was very nervous about putting her credit card in her phone, because if she lost her phone, there's her credit card. And I'm like,
Hmm.
there's a bigger problem at hand if this is the case. But I think there's a generational element to this. And I think, with the younger set, where we're at today with payments and face and that biometric aspect of
Hmm.
your phone is helping in a great way. Now, I think there's also a part that we're going to see by the end of the year and starting to come in Q2, end of Q3, hopefully it's here by Q4. And I think everybody heard last year about Fed Now
Mm-hmm.
and the moving of money that exists in your account now. And it's not credit from one aspect to another, similar to Zelbin in a business environment. I think that aspect is going to start to become more of a option in businesses and making payments uh, than something new that nobody's heard of yet. Because I think that's existing technology, and there's partnerships that I know that are in the works and are happening. It's just building it out. How do we get it to where it's usable and it's scalable for vendors to use? Because that way you're moving money incredibly fast. The fees are an unknown right now, but there will still be a cost. It won't be as much, I think, as a credit card. So it'll be closer to the ACH, or money order type of, or electronic transfer type aspect of costs. But that could be very dynamic. And then people have to make the decision: am I going to pay with a credit, which is money I technically have access to,
Yep.
versus my debit, which is real money, and do I want it to be gone instantaneously? So then it becomes a budgeting question. But I think that could be really interesting for businesses to offer that, because there are people who like to pay with their existing funds. They don't like credit. They don't believe in it. There's massive movements out there for it. And, going for those consumers is good, because some of them may have a debit card reluctantly.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can offer them these programs that I think are on the rise that we'll see this year, I think that could make more of a game changer than something else.
Now, Joe, you mentioned some regulatory aspects, so I kind of want to dig a little deeper here into just what are some of the, just hurdles with regulatory across any digital payment solution, but then also just the need for a global standardization. And it seems like we're starting to head there with some of these options, right? And they're going to always vary based on the different global regions that you're living within, and currencies, et cetera, and regulatory bodies. But overall, what are just maybe 2 or 3 key highlights about just digital payments, regulatory hurdles, and then just where global standardization could really be benefited from combining forces?
There could be a huge benefit, but I think the stumbling block in the way of that is you're going to have the central banks
Mhm.
are going to have to give up power to a something to or come up to an agreement where, hey, here's some standardizations. That becomes very difficult.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to happen tomorrow. So while I think it's a good idea, practicality, I'm not sure we get there anytime soon. In terms of things to be aware of, I think as an American, we're very used to the way we shop. Visa, Amex, MasterCard, Discover. You go anywhere on the planet, you have one of those 4 cards, you're pretty much going to be able to make your purchase, not have an issue. Maybe you have to sign, maybe you have to, put in a PIN in a foreign country, but that's going to work. But if you're a business here and you're trying to break into different parts of the world, those networks aren't necessarily as prevalent. So it's being able to work with a partner that's in, South America or Asia or even parts of Europe, where my card is not on those rails. So my card is on a very different network that has to be dealt with. And there are vendors that can easily deal with that. The hard part becomes in volumes and how much are you taking from there. But I think, it's understanding that as you start to go international or allow international payments into your American site to ship out, then there's going to be some different ways that people are going to want to pay that maybe you're not used to and maybe you don't have access to. So that's something that, we've helped a lot of clients with understanding how to do that. And their rates are very different. I mean, from Canada, US to Mexico, the costs of taking a credit card vary. And again, that's based on government and laws and rules.
Mhm.
Some of that is from the government, some of it's from the associations themselves. So it all depends. It's all different. So that becomes a little confusing and something you want to look for. I think when you're finding a partner, and depending on where your business is going, you want to be able to at least understand or know, hey, our goal in 5 years is to be here. Do I need to change everything that I'm doing today when I get there in 5 years, or can I just grow through that? I think that's an important part. And that's definitely a conversation we like to have, when we talk to our customers and understand where they're at. Because, solving something today's, I don't want to say it's easy,
Mhm.
but to have the same conversation and have to do a massive lift in 5 years, in another 5 years, just because you didn't ask today or then, that becomes a problem. And I think people will deal with it, but make that easier for everybody in the long run. Yeah. Did that answer?
It answers it.
Okay.
Let's go a little bit beyond that and
Okay.
talk about how AI is impacting the digital payment industry with all the things that you've talked about, from fraud to
Yeah.
security and the different ways that there's an algorithm that's going to look and say, okay, this number, this card number, or this, IP potentially is
Mm-hmm.
more known for high volume of transactions. I mean, there's a lot of tools out there claiming that they use it already, but from your expert perspective, where do you see AI fitting in with these digital payment
Yeah.
solutions for merchants, especially?
I think whoever can harness AI in the best way when it comes to fraud,
Mhm.
like we talked about, and can make that something that's usable for everyone in all levels of business size, that could be huge. Because that's something where you might not have a database, but you can look at behavior and have that reliability through the technology. I think that's a big aspect of it. There's also, how do you use AI to market through the data that that is out there, and how do you work with that as well? So I think it's kind of like the very early stages. As much as crypto's been around and people are
Mhm.
using it, I don't think we're really able to, harness it and drive it like a Formula One car. I feel like we're kind of in those, for anybody who's from the 80s, those early Fiero. It looks good, it drives okay, but there's a lot of opportunity and improvement to go. And I don't think it'll take that long. Like, that's the fun part about technology, is that growing up, it's like, oh, every 5 or 10 years something new. Now it's every year or two, and I think AI, with rules and making sure it's responsible, I think in 1-2 years we could
Mhm.
be somewhere where that's really driving not only the accessibility of payments in a very fast way, especially for those who have accessibility issues, but also when it comes to fraud, maybe there's a way to combat this, in a way that preempts, like you said, hey, these IPs, because nobody can whitelist everything. These
Yeah.
are suspicious, or these cards are bad. Don't even allow them. Or there's been some suspicious activity elsewhere within our network on these cards, and they're buying X, but now they want to buy Y.
Mhm.
We're not going to allow that. And they can just shut them down and maybe just, nip that card in the bud
Yeah.
completely.
That's great. And AI definitely, I think, is the same now as where I felt digital payments were a couple years ago, and just turned maybe a little bit more than that for digital payments. But we kind of had the initial few that were there. Then we had this massive fintech rush of
Hmm.
everyone wanting to be in the digital payments business. And now we're coming a little bit back more to the consolidation. AI is definitely in that mad rush of all these startups looking to say, hey, we do this for this specific little tiny niche, but then they're going to get bought out eventually by someone else and merge together. On the digital payments side, and you mentioned this with the on the PayPal episode previously, where uh, we really have the utilization of the buy now pay later. And you and I have had past episodes
Hmm.
about buy now pay later, or BNPL, and uh, where do you see some of the other dedicated companies to services like that in digital payments and their future? Because you start getting the heavy hitters, PayPal, Apple has an offering now for the buy now pay later aspect as well. Um, are these others going to still stick around, or are they going to merge in? What are your thoughts around those?
I think you'll see, between the buy now, pay later and the Fed now type,
Mm-hmm.
those two offerings are coming from the old, stodgy, have always been their style of companies. Those are coming.
Yeah.
If they're not there already, they're definitely early stages, and some of them are approaching it in different ways. I mean, you don't rush to those changes in those companies, but the products they'll offer, one, you're going to have a large bank or company behind it, so you're not going to be gone. You're not going to worry about
Mhm.
VC. You're not going to worry about failure rates. That maybe the product you're using that's flashy and fun is going to be gone in 2 years. They're going to be there, but then the technology is going to be built out and the usability, and you're going to enjoy the same service and reliability that you've had if you use those companies for the last 10 years.
Mhm.
So I think payments is interesting in the way you said it. Like, everybody would go to the store, you'd hand a card, you'd get your stuff, and it was pretty vanilla. And then websites happened in the 90s, and it was pretty much the same.
Yeah.
And I would almost say, until about Apple Pay coming out, like, there was PayPal, but that confused people. It's like, well, do I need PayPal?
Mhm.
And if I get PayPal, is it going to a PayPal account? Like, what? how does it work? And I've had clients who are like, we won't do it. We did it 10 years ago and people didn't like it. I'm like, it's different. It's not as cloistered as it once was. And then Google Wallet came out and everybody's like, oh, Google Wallet. And then it kind of like came in and went out really softly and quietly. It's still there, but it's not what it was. So I think you're starting to see now with technology and the way that consumers have an aspect for speed, because they're always going to drive this.
Yeah.
The business can drive whatever they want, but if no one's going to pay for it, then you got to change to what makes the people purchase. So for the consumer, I think, at this point, everybody's going to obviously need a credit and debit card on all of the normal rails that we expect. But having the ability to pay with Venmo, if people keep money in there, is one thing, or just use it that way. Apple Pay obviously is tied to a credit card. The buy now, pay later, the Google Wallets, having any way to offer it within reason is there. And I think even PPCP from PayPal has an aspect of crypto. If you really push it, there's something there. You just got to see, do we really want to do that? Because as a business owner, I may take crypto today and get $100 for the shoes I sold, but that crypto in 10 minutes might be worth 90.
Yeah.
Am I okay with that? How quickly can I convert whatever I'm taking, through the technology or the banking system to get to the end result of the currency I needed to pay my rent in?
Yeah.
There's that part of it. So I think we're at a pace now where, we were old and tried. There were some changes, but now I think we're starting to get into a sprint again into what is going to be new and what's going to be used. And I think we'll be there for a little bit with some changes to it, but it's all going to be geared towards how does the consumer feel comfortable paying and paying quickly. And as you said, feeling comfortable and secure about it. And if we can get there, then it's going to be a whole other jump that, I think is a Malcolm Gladwell experiment to say, what is that? It'll almost be, maybe it'll be more biometric aspect, more of a biometric aspect where you don't even have to click the button.
Yeah.
It'll just do it. Cause like do you have global entry?
I do. Yeah.
So global entry, when I first started, you had to put fingerprints down and it's like, do it again. You're like, oh, it's taking forever, but you're still not waiting in line. And then you would come up and you'd put your face in the halo and you'd hit the button and then it would spin out a little, receipt. Now you go up, you don't even put anything. You just stare at the screen. It takes a picture and tells you to get in line.
Yeah.
And then as you're standing in line, the officer will say, Joe Campagna. And you're like, that's me. He's like, have a good day. You don't touch anything. So if we get to that aspect of purchase, then you have to worry about if your kids look like you and what are they purchasing and how do I put the brakes on that?
Yeah.
Because I think two-factor authentication is here to stay. And, that's as much as people will complain about it or whatever, until they have a breach and their card is at risk, it's a hassle. But the second they have that, they're more than happy to know that the alert is hitting correctly.
There's a great, for those of you who follow the Market Tunist, Tom Fishburne, he has great just comics about the whole MarTech space and everything. And actually the one just this morning was highlighting some AI in search and everything. So I encourage people to check that out. We can put a link to his website in the show notes, but it was all about that kind of like, you don't have to click anymore. It's going to start thinking for you aspect. And digital payments are definitely there. And we talked about that a couple times throughout this episode so far. And I love where that's going, but to your point, where does it become not an advantage anymore? It becomes more of a risk.
Yeah.
Definitely with 4 boys at home and 2 of them starting to get more into the technical devices at this point. My calendar just got emoji'd without me knowing the other night when my wife and I were out and babysitter was there, and all of a sudden I see, oh wow, there's 50 calendar entry updates. What just happened? Well, for all these updates, he went and added emojis like lunch with some friends of ours the other day, and all of a sudden there's like a hamburger icon, French fry icon, and all these other food icons after it. All sorts of fun things that he added to our calendar. And I'm like, well, there goes his access to the family calendar.
Yeah.
But to that point, it's also ensuring that you have things set up so that you don't have unauthorized in the family purchases as well.
Yeah.
But then also, if you do leave your device out and you don't have security aspects on it, to your point, right, there is your credit cards already tied to it. A lot of people don't even carry a wallet fully anymore. Certain states have adopted the digital driver's license, which I would love for Illinois to do, but I will hope for years probably before that happens. But with that, it's really intriguing because I get more frustrated now as a consumer if I go in and I can't use my phone to pay at a location, or the tap to pay doesn't work.
Right.
And for some reason in Europe, I feel that their tap to pay never has an issue. It's always fast and responsive. And so there's things for us here to learn and take away from that. But on your website, especially, giving that quick payment option is critical. And even we've talked about this on past episodes with the Buy Now with Prime from Amazon, where I can actually complete that transaction from the product detail page because I'm not looking for them to shop for more.
Right.
So there's a lot of different ways that you can address how digital payments benefit the checkout experience, but it's not the standard checkout experience that we were all used to from before.
Right.
It's completely changed. There's been companies spun up just for the checkout experience to try and accelerate it. Now we're starting to see the digital payment providers really start to give more options for merchants to help reduce those friction points and make it as fast as possible. Because at the end of the day, if you don't capture them right then and there when they're ready to check out, they're going to forget about it, or you're going to have to try and remind them through other, marketing automation follow-ups, et cetera, et cetera. So why not try and capture it today?
Oh, no, I get my emails. Hey, you've left some stuff in your cart.
Oh, yeah.
Why don't you come back and purchase it? And I'm like, no, I still have the browser up.
Yeah.
I just got that on hold for now because do I really need that extra whatever?
Yeah. But I wait for the promotion code to come for me.
There's
how long until they send me, here's 10% more off your purchase if you complete your cart today.
I don't know if we've ever discussed this. I'm a big Lego nerd. Lego doesn't do that. So they're just like, are you going to buy the Ornithopter and the Concorde or not?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm going to buy it eventually. I just need to.
Well, wait, hold on. We have not discussed this. So are these Legos for you?
Yes.
Or for you to do with your children?
Yes and yes.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. So I will love to build them with them, and my twin 7-year-olds, they will get involved with it. But there are certain ones. For me, it's the ability to turn my brain off and do it. Like as a kid, I used to love building models.
Yep.
And you can sit there and kind of go through something for 10 or 15 minutes. I don't meditate, but I can turn my brain off, either get some aspect of whatever I'm building done. And then the fun part is at the end, the kids can enjoy some aspect of it. Like I have the roller coaster. So for the longest time, every morning they would come in, the roller coaster would go, and they would giggle, and I loved it. And then there's the lighthouse, and for the longest time they couldn't figure out how to turn the light on. So I'd be like, just say abracadabra, and the light was on. Like, oh, where is it? I'm like, it's magic. So, I mean, that's gone away. They figured it out. But yeah, no, for me, in that aspect, the other part that you had mentioned, we always think about, kids and getting on it. And there's one thing I think that would be interesting. You asked about the future. And in America, at least, the generations are starting to flip, right? That older generation is starting to be the top heavy aspect of America, and in a good way. But I think the way that they purchase, and if you're the one who's helping to take care of them and they're maybe not so cognizant of what they're purchasing or where money's going, I think that could be something where, you can put limits on it or understand, if, as the child, you become the parent. How are we managing our parents' spending or understanding so that they're not getting taken by a Nigerian prince, and that is definitely a very real aspect of this. And how do we help people not get scammed, not necessarily by losing their card, but by, something with a phone call or whatever. And there are some very elaborate plots and, ways that people can get wrapped into this. But I think if there's a way, on the other side of the fraud in a not emoji way, it's helping those parents and those taking care of them. That would be an interesting solution as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And now, because I'm curious, Legos.
Yes.
Ever glue them?
No.
Oh, thank God.
No.
Okay, good.
No, I build the set. I keep the instructions. I'm not one to take a picture of Legos and it tells me what else I could build. I'm fascinated by that. But yeah, no, I mean, as a kid, the sets were not very elaborate, right? You had to like put stickers on. You have to do that a little bit still, but to build
part of any kid toy building.
Is it straight? Why does it look like a lunatic did this? Oh, it's upside down now. I got to peel it off. It's not going to go back.
I just had that with my my 4-year-old's birthday a few weeks back. Some Paw Patrol device, and I put the thing on. I'm like, oh, okay, look, I got most of the stickers on. I'm looking at them like, they're all upside down because I had the piece upside down.
Yeah. So for me, it started with a lot of the architectural stuff
Yep.
in the cities.
Mhm.
And I have the Colosseum, which is not a small piece.
Wow, yeah.
But I'm also a nerd who likes Tolkien. So when they brought out the
Mhm.
Rivendell, I was like, well, I gotta get that.
Yeah.
And the space stuff. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. My
I
boys are huge in the Star Wars side of it.
Yeah.
And let me tell you about digital payments and that. You don't buy Lego sets right away when they're at nice prices on Amazon. They go up quickly
Yeah.
in price. It's interesting how that has just been like, I really should use that buy now button versus the add to cart. And yeah, it's definitely an interesting aspect to how pricing can immediately be impacted because of availability, the
Mhm.
discounts gone, whatever it may be.
You're absolutely right. There was the for my daughters 3 years ago, I bought the Cinderella box of the castle,
Yeah.
Disney castle. And when it came out at the time, I was like, if we don't get this now, it's going to be gone by February and we'll
Mhm.
never see it again. And I'm not paying 3 times.
Yep.
So we got it, kept it on the side, and then eventually got it out and they play with it and it's great. And, you get Mickey and the rest of the Legos and they love it. So, and then we got the Frozen one because
Mhm.
obviously you can't have Anna and Elsa without their castle.
Yes.
Or the Ice Palace.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, you're right. There are certain ones that I get right away, and there's other ones I know I have some time,
Mhm.
and they've definitely learned to market very well. They're
Oh,
like,
yeah.
a lot of our early adopters are older now. How do
Yeah.
we keep getting money from them
Mm-hmm.
to do certain things? Like, hey, there's a James Bond
Yeah.
car, and you're like, I need the James Bond
That's
car.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean, overall. So, generationally, because now we're really
Yes.
going into a rabbit hole, to use your phrase. And it wasn't about credit cards and
No.
debt and ease of use and all of that fun stuff. Digital payments, definitely here to continue growing with the different alternative options that we have.
Mhm.
We've seen a lot of the peer-to-peer and all of that come through. With the PayPal PCP aspect, it's starting to kind of bring everything back underneath one umbrella so that you have all those alternative options as a merchant that you can provide out as just ways to complete transactions for your customers. With that, we got some great advice from you, Joe, on what you might think the future holds in the digital payment area. Any final parting thoughts before we wrap up this episode?
I would say it's new year.
Mm-hmm.
Take a look at what's going on in your statements. Make sure nothing's changed. Make sure your business hasn't changed. And just know that in March, April, Visa, MasterCard, Discover, Amex make their rule changes for the next 6 months. Last year at this time, there was a ground shaking change for surcharge from 3.5% to 3%. I haven't seen anything yet. I don't expect it to be too crazy, but you never know. So check your pricing. Make sure that hasn't grown or changed in some weird way. And just know that there could be implications come, April, May for the way that you are doing things that could cost you more money.
Yep. And if there's any questions that you have about digital payments, please reach out to us at AmericanEagle.com. Yep. And Joe, the Duke Campagna, will come in and be the expert for you. We want to thank everyone for tuning into the future. Thank you, Joe, for being on the show again and for hosting the last episode. But thank you all for listening to Lessons for Tomorrow podcast. For more information about the topics discussed today with regards to digital payments, check out the description of this episode. If you want us to cover a specific topic or submit feedback, please reach out, email us at lessonsfortomorrow@americaneagle.com and let us know anything that you want to share with us regarding the topics covered today or on past episodes. Be sure to follow this podcast wherever you listen to them. And we thank you for tuning in, and we will talk to you in the future.